Let's start with a meditation. Close your eyes and think thoughts of goodwill. Goodwill is a wish for happiness, true happiness. Because true happiness comes from within, it can be made into a universal, goodwill can be a universal attitude. Each person has to find true happiness by developing his or her inner resources. So when you wish for your own true happiness, it's not a selfish thought. But you have to remember, simply wishing is not going to make you happy. You have to create the causes, act in skillful ways. So basically, when you have goodwill for yourself, you're saying, may I understand the causes for true happiness and be willing and able to act on them. To tell yourself, may I be truly happy. And then spread the same thought to others. Start with people who are close to your heart, your family, your very close friends. May they find true happiness too. And then spread those thoughts out in ever-widening circles to people you know well and like. To people you like even though you don't know them so well. To people you're more neutral about. And to people you don't like. Because remember, when you're wishing goodwill, it's not saying, may you be happy doing whatever you're doing. If people are behaving in unskillful ways, you hope for them to see the error of their ways and change. And that's the thought you can have for anyone without hypocrisy. Spread thoughts of goodwill to people you don't even know. And not just people, living beings of all types in all directions. East, west, north, south, above and below, out to infinity. May we all find true happiness in our hearts. Now bring your attention to the breath. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths. And notice where you feel the breathing in the body. When we talk about breath, it's not so much the air coming in and out through the nose. It's the feeling of energy that flows through the body. And you can feel that anywhere. Anywhere in your nervous system there's going to be breath. So where is it most obvious? Focus your attention there and watch it for a while as you breathe in and breathe out. Try to keep your awareness as continuous as possible. If your thoughts wander off, just drop them and come right back. Try to notice, does long breathing feel good? If it does, keep it up. If it doesn't, you can change. Make it shorter, more shallow, heavier, lighter, faster, slower. See what rhythm and texture of breathing feels best for the body right now. If your thoughts wander away 10 times, 100 times, just drop them 10 times, 100 times. Don't get discouraged. The fact that you see yourself wandering away and can catch yourself, that's a good sign. And when you come back to the breath, try to reward yourself with a breath that feels especially satisfying. Now, as the breath gets more comfortable, there is a tendency to focus on the comfort and to forget about the breath, in which case you lose your foundation. So the next step is to be aware of the whole body as you breathe in and the whole body as you breathe out. And a good way to build up to that whole body awareness is to go through the body first, section by section, to see how the breathing feels in the different parts of the body. A good place to start is down around the navel and the abdomen. Locate that part of the body in your awareness. Watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And if you notice any sense of tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax, so that no new tension builds up as you breathe in, and you don't hold on to any tension as you breathe out. Now move your attention up to the base of the breastbone or the solar plexus and follow the same 3 steps there. 1, locate that part of the body in your awareness. Where is it right now? 2, watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And then 3, if there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. Now move your attention up to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. Now move your attention to the base of the throat and follow the same steps there. Now come to the middle of the head. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering not only through the nose, but also through the eyes, the ears, in from the back of the head, down from the top of the head, going deep into the brain. And then as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the head in all directions, gently working through any patterns of tension you may feel around your eyes, forehead, jaws, back of the neck, and dissolving those patterns of tension away. Now move your attention to the back of the neck, right at the base of the skull. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there from the back, and then going down through the neck, the shoulders, the arms, out to the tips of the fingers. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. Now keeping your attention at the back of the neck, this time as you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there and then going down both sides of the spine, down to the tailbone. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the whole back into the air. And as you focus on the back, if you notice that you're holding more tension in one side than the other, allow that side to relax. And see if you keep to bring things into balance. And see if you can keep it relaxed all the way through the in-breath, all the way through the out. Now bring your attention down to the tailbone. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there and then going down through the hips, the legs, the ankles, feet, out to the tips of the toes. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. And that completes one cycle in the survey of the body. If you're meditating on your own, you can go through the body as many times as you like. But for the time being, choose any one spot in the body that's most congenial to stay focused. Allow your attention to settle there, and then from that spot spread out to fill the whole body. So you're aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out. Allow the breath to find whatever rhythm feels good. Your main responsibility right now is to maintain this sense of centered but broad awareness. It may have a tendency to shrink, especially on the out-breath. So each time you breathe in, remind yourself, whole body. Each time you breathe out, whole body. This centered but broad awareness is healing for the body, healing for the mind. And because it's still and all around, it provides a good foundation for insight to arise. For the time being, though, don't worry about the insights. Just make sure this foundation is strong. Now I invite you to continue meditating while I give the talk. The Buddha was not the sort of person to go around picking fights with people. There are times when people would come to him to debate, and if he felt that the person was actually interested in finding the truth, he would debate the person. He almost never went out to argue with other people. And I say almost because there's one topic that he would go out to argue with others. That was on the question of whether what you're experiencing right now in the present moment is totally determined by the past. If people held that view, he would go and ask them, do you really hold that view? And if they said yes, he said, well, in that case, people are misbehaving and they can do nothing about it. If they steal, they kill, they do other things. If it's totally determined by the past, they have no freedom of choice. And they have no freedom of choice, then there's no idea of what should or should not be done. They just have to do it under the compulsion. And in a case like that, he says you're left unprotected. You cannot stop yourself from doing unskillful things. So it was very important to him to realize that you do play a role in shaping the present moment by your present moment intentions. The way he explains it is that you have potentials coming in from past karma for certain feelings, certain perceptions, certain ways of thinking. But you don't really experience that unless you shape them with your present moment fabrications, present moment sankharas. So you play a role. You have some choice. You have some freedom of choice in the present moment. And that's really important because that's what allows you to practice. Without that freedom, he said, there would be no path to the end of suffering. So it's important that you understand that you can play a role in shaping the present moment. And you want to look into what are these fabrications he's talking about. He's basically talking about three: bodily fabrication, verbal fabrication, mental fabrication. These are the things that take the raw material from past karma and turn them into an experience right now. Bodily fabrication is the way you breathe. Verbal fabrication is the way you talk to yourself. The Buddha calls this directed thought and evaluation. You choose a topic to focus on, and then you make comments. Like the weather. Boy, the weather is hot and humid today. And then you can say, I'm miserable because of the hot weather. And by the way you talk to yourself, you can make yourself miserable. Or you can tell yourself, okay, it's hot only on my skin. No big deal. And then you keep on doing whatever you have. So how you talk to yourself is going to determine whether you suffer from the hot weather or not. And then finally there's mental fabrication, which are your perceptions and your feelings. Perceptions are the labels you put on things. This is this and that is that. And then feelings are feeling tones of pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain. And you don't have to look too far. You can ask yourself, suppose someone is giving you a massage, and the massage is a little bit painful, but you can stand it. In fact, sometimes you say, ooh, that feels really good, because you know that it's good for you. But if someone were to come up to you on the street and do that to you, you'd call the cops. So your perception makes all the difference between whether it is a pleasant or an unpleasant experience. And so a lot of times the Buddha would want to focus on that aspect of your awareness. What are you doing right now to shape the present moment? And you look at his teachings. He gives you recommendations. This is how you talk to yourself. This is how you make perceptions in your mind. We may notice in the suttas, there are lots and lots of analogies. This is like this, that is like that. He's giving you advice on what kind of perceptions to hold in mind. That would be skillful. For example, there's a case where he compares the practice to trying to get milk out of a cow. Now there's the right way and the wrong way to get it out of the cow. The wrong way is to twist the horn. The right way is to pull on the udder. And when you have that image in mind, that helps you to have an understanding of what's going on. Someone comes along and says, when you practice, you should not be making an effort, you should just let things happen on their own. And you think about cows. Milk is not going to come out of the cow on its own. Now, if you've been doing wrong effort and you've been twisting the horn, and you decide, well, I should relax and not do that anymore, okay, you're not tormenting the cow. It's less difficult for you. And you'll have some people that say, well, this is a sign that you should not be doing effort at all. But it's not. It's just we're doing effort at the wrong place. You can't just sit there and wait for the milk to come oozing out of the pores of the cow. And even if it did, you probably wouldn't want it. But you look for where's the udder, and you pull on the udder. So you make the effort at the right point. So the Buddha gives you these analogies so you can think correctly about the path. The same thing with the analogy of the raft. We had the question the other day. When you meditate and the breath gets really comfortable, doesn't that lead to clinging? We hear that clinging is a bad thing. But then you think of the analogy of the raft. The Buddha says it's like trying to build a raft across the river. This side is not safe, the other side is safe. But there's no nibbana yacht that's going to come over and pick you up. You have to make a raft. Now what do you make the raft out of? You make the raft out of things on this side. And the things on this side are your form of your body, feelings, perceptions, thought constructs, consciousness. You wrap them together, and then you hold on. You hold on to the path. You get to the other side, then you let go. So when you have an analogy like this to hold in mind, it helps you get some sense of what the Buddha is talking about. And it is an important part of the Dhamma. Sometimes you hear people say that the true Dhamma is in the Abhidhamma, which just has lists of words. But here the Buddha is giving you instructions in how to talk to yourself, what perceptions to hold in mind. He even gives you instructions on how to breathe, so that you can learn how to fashion the present moment more skillfully. We can see this, say, in the practice of goodwill meditation. You hold in mind the thought, may all beings be happy. That's a verbal fabrication. And then you think all directions. Here the Buddha gives you an analogy. He says it's like someone blowing a trumpet. When they blow the sound of the trumpet, it doesn't just go to this person or just to that person. It goes in all directions. So you want to have that same quality of expansive mind as you spread thoughts of goodwill. And it's even more explicit in breath meditation. Last night we talked a little bit about the 16 steps that the Buddha teaches. If you look more in detail, the Buddha talks explicitly about bodily fabrication and mental fabrication. And the instructions he gives you to think, this is how to think about the breath as you breathe in, this is how to think about the breath as you breathe out. Those are instructions in verbal fabrication. So let's go through those 16 steps. They come in 4 sets of 4 that are called tetrads. And the pattern in the first 3 tetrads is that you get sensitive to either body, feelings, or mind. You notice to the extent to which those aspects of your experience are being fabricated right now, and then you energize it or calm it down as you need to do it. So with the body, 4 steps are discerning when the breath is long, but discerning when the breath is short. Being aware of the whole body as you breathe in, being aware of the whole body as you breathe out. And then finally, step number 4 is calming bodily fabrication. He says explicitly, bodily fabrication, to alert you to the fact that the breath is something that you do intentionally. And because it's intentional, you can intend to breathe in different ways. And this way you try to breathe in a way that's calming. In other places, he says, before you calm things down, energize things first. Otherwise, if you're sitting there, you're kind of drowsy, and you say, okay, calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. And that's not right. First you give yourself energy, then you calm it down. So he deliberately says, calming bodily fabrication. He could say, calming the breath. But he wants to point out to the fact, okay, be sensitive to the fact that you are fabricating this experience right now and you have a choice on how to breathe. That's the first tetrad. The second tetrad is feelings. It's important to realize that it's not going to be the case that you first deal with the body, then you deal with feelings, then you deal with the mind. You're going to be dealing with them pretty much all at the same time. The question is where the problem is, that's where you focus. In the case of feelings, he says you want to be sensitive to feelings of rapture, feelings of pleasure. You want to be sensitive to mental fabrication, perceptions and feelings. And you want to be sensitive to calming mental fabrications. With feelings of rapture, feelings of pleasure, he says, there is a potential in your body right now for feelings of rapture, feelings of pleasure. Now he doesn't tell you where they are. This is something you have to look for yourself. One quick lesson in rapture is to close your eyes and focus on your hands. And think of every little muscle in your hands relaxing. And the blood will flow down into the hand. And after all, you don't squeeze the hand at all when you breathe out. You don't squeeze it when you breathe in. We sometimes, when we're doing breath meditation, we have a tendency to make a little squeeze at the end of the in-breath and a squeeze at the end of the out-breath. Don't do that. Think of the in-breath flowing into the out-breath flowing into the in-breath. And after a while, there will be a sense of fullness in your hands. Once that sense of fullness develops, allow it to come up the arms. Another spot you can do it is right here at the middle of the chest, or at the breastbone. Think of that relaxing as much as possible. And then as it begins to fill up with blood, think of that sense of fullness spreading through the body. So these potentials are there. There's also the potential for pleasure. You can breathe in different ways. Now this will involve certain perceptions. The perceptions not only shape your mind, but they will have an impact on how you feel your body. You use whatever perception. One perception that I like is thinking that the breath is not coming in from the outside, it's actually coming up from the inside in the body. And it's not coming from just one spot in the body, it's coming from every little cell in the body. That way you develop a sense of every part of the body is equal. No part of the body is ignored. And again, a sense of fullness can develop in the body this way. So you have these potentials. And here the Buddha specifically talks about mental fabrication as something that you consciously do. Choose your perceptions, see what impact they have on the mind, what impact they have on the body. And that way you can create a sense of stillness, a sense of fullness, a sense of pleasure, just being right here, which is what you want. Then the third tetrad, the Buddha talks about being sensitive to the mind. First you're sensitive to the mind, then you either gladden the mind, in other words, you remind yourself of what a good thing it is that you're here meditating. You're not on the street. You're not wasting your time with the internet. You're actually doing something useful, developing a good skill. And then you concentrate the mind. If the mind is feeling kind of scattered, you say, just stay focused on one thing. Keep it focused on one thing. And if there's anything that's burdening the mind, you let that burden down. You release the mind. So what you've got here, you've got body, feeling, mind. Which are the things you're trying to bring together in a state of concentration? Counting? So when they're not settling down together, you can ask yourself, is the problem with the breath, is the problem with the feeling, is the problem with the mind right now? You focus on where the problem is, and then you get all these things together. Now for that fourth step of the mind, it gets explained in the next tetrad, which is the tetrad on Dhammas. The Buddha says, you focus on inconstancy, you focus on dispassion, you focus on inconstancy, dispassion, cessation, relinquishment, as you breathe in, as you breathe out. Now he's missing some steps here. When you focus on inconstancy, you're trying to look at what are the drawbacks of whatever it is that's burdening the mind. And with inconstancy, you would also think about stress or not self. If something is inconstant, it's stressful. If it's inconstant and stressful, it's not worth hanging on to as your own. When you see the drawbacks and that they outweigh whatever pleasure you get out of whatever that thought was that was burdening the mind, then you let go. And you stop fabricating it. That's what the cessation is about. You develop dispassion for that kind of fabrication. In fabrication, you realize this is something I'm doing right now. And if it's causing me stress and suffering, why am I doing it? Why can't I let go? That's what causes that fabrication to cease. And the process of fabrication ceases. And then with relinquishment, you let go of the whole thing. The whole issue just drops. That's how you let go of individual defilements. And that's also the pattern for how total letting go eventually happens. You see that you're holding on to something, you're doing a process that's causing you suffering, that has a lot of drawbacks, whatever the drawbacks may be. You say, why am I doing this? It's like fixing food for yourself, but you're a bad cook. Say, why am I making this bad food? You know? I can go out and get good food from a street stall, street vendor, and then you just stop doing whatever it is that you've been doing that's been causing you suffering. So these are the 16 steps in breath meditation, and they're basically guides in how to fabricate your present moment experience more skillfully. Breathe in a way that's more skillfully. Talk to yourself in a way that's more skillful. Hold images in mind that are more skillful. And with breath meditation, the Buddha actually gives you an image to hold in mind. He says it's like a turner. A turner is kind of like someone who, in the old days, who would run with what was the equivalent of a lathe. You know what a lathe is? It's a machine that turns things around so you can carve them into round shapes. Well, back in the old days, they didn't have a machine. What you had was a turner. I can't do it right now, but he would have his one leg up like this, his foot down here. He'd put the stick here under his toe. And then he would have his knife right there next to his toe. And then he would turn the stick back and forth with a bow. And he just wouldn't turn it back and forth mechanically. I saw a video of this one time. Sometimes he turns it this way, sometimes he turns it that way, sometimes he turns a short turn, sometimes a long turn. So he's focused at the blade, but he also has to be sensitive to his arm, which is a good image for the whole body awareness you're trying to develop. There's one focus, but you're not blind to any other part of the body. And you do have to be sensitive to the whole body. So the Buddha gives you just the analogy so you get a sense of the kind of mind state you're trying to develop, which is focused but broad. So he's giving you, a perception to hold in mind as you're doing this, but also teaching you that this is how you create more skillful, breathe more skillfully, how you talk to yourself more skillfully, how you hold perceptions and feelings more skillfully. So you can actually create a sense of well-being in the present moment. And this is one of the reasons why when we meditate, we're focusing on the present moment. We're not thinking abstractly about how great the Buddha is. I mean, you can think about that, but after a while you have to think, well, what am I doing right now? That's where the real work is. And it's because we have choice in the present moment that we can meditate. So he teaches you how to take advantage of that fact as you meditate. And now, of course, you don't just limit it to when you're meditating. As you get more sensitive to how you breathe, more sensitive to how you talk to yourself, more sensitive to how you hold certain perceptions in mind, you can use that same knowledge to deal with other mind states that come up in the course of the day. A good example is anger. When you're angry about something, and you realize, okay, this is not skillful. I do a lot of stupid things when I'm angry. In fact, this is one of the ways the Buddha has you talk about to yourself. So I've got to get this anger under control. Sometimes we feel if there's been an injustice, I've got to get angry or else I won't fight against the injustice. That's not the case. Because often when you're angry, something looks good. It's like you have tunnel vision, and something looks really big in terms of the tunnel vision. And then when the anger goes, you have a bigger view, and you think, oh my gosh, you said that was really stupid. So that's one of the things you have to talk to yourself when the anger comes. Is you tell yourself, I cannot let the anger take over. If I want to do something skillful right now, if I want to solve the problem, I've got to get the anger out of the way. In that case, you ask yourself, how am I breathing? Is the way I breathe aggravating the anger? Can I breathe more calmly? And then you remember the instructions you have with breath meditation. The instructions for how to breathe are not useful only when you're sitting here with your eyes closed. As you go through the day, you can breathe in a calm way. And that makes it easier to deal with things as they come up, because you're not aggravating your own self by the way you breathe. Then you can talk to yourself. As I said, one of the things you talk to yourself is, I've got to get rid of this anger. I can't let it control me. And then you can also talk to yourself, well, what is actually happening in the situation? Is it the situation as bad as I thought it was? Sometimes you tend to exaggerate. One of the worst things you can do is, why do you always do that? Do people always do that? Every now and then. Why do you always throw your clothing on the floor? You know? They don't sit there overflowing clothing on the floor all the time. So you can think about it in other ways. Okay, why do you have this habit? And what can we do to get past that habit? And also you can ask yourself, this person that I'm angry at right now, are they totally bad? This is where the Buddha has you think about their good side. Now part of the time when you're really angry, it's beneath my dignity to think about their good side because they're such a bad person. And here the Buddha gives you a perception. He says it's like you're coming across a desert, you're hot, tired, trembling with thirst, and you come across a little bit of water in a cow's footprint. Now you realize if you were to scoop up the water with your hand, you'd get it muddy. But you need the water. So what do? You make sure nobody's looking, and you slurp up the water. Now you wouldn't want someone to come along with an iPhone at that point, take a picture, put it up on Instagram. But you tell yourself, hey, I need the water. Even though it doesn't look dignified, this is what I've got to do. In the same way, you may feel that it's beneath your dignity to think about that other person's good qualities when they've just done something really bad. But then you realize, if I'm going to deal effectively with this situation, I've got to get past the anger. I've got to think of their good qualities so that I can be inspired to do something good in response. Because if you can't see any goodness in other people, then the Buddha says, think about it, you're coming across the desert, and you come across a person who's sick on the side of the road. Now, no matter who that person is, you may not know who he is or who she is, but you can't help but feel sorry for that person. You think, could somebody come and help this person? Maybe I can't help it, but maybe somebody can. So even if someone has no good qualities at all, you should still have compassion. So these are perceptions the Buddha has you hold in mind when you're angry. Then you can talk to yourself again, verbal fabrication. Remind yourself about times in the past when you were angry and you did something really stupid that you regretted afterwards. And then you can tell yourself, okay, I don't want to do anything stupid, I've got to let the anger go so I can really look effectively at the situation, see what needs to be done. So the Buddha is giving you tools here. How to breathe, how to talk to yourself, what perceptions to hold in mind, what feelings to focus on, so that you can be more skillful in shaping the present moment. Because it's how we shape the present moment that makes us suffer. If you ever looked in Dependent Core Rising, you may have looked at it and said, no, I'm sorry, it's just too complex. One of the important things to notice about Dependent Core Rising is that so many things come before sensory contact, before you even have any sights coming in to the eye, ears, songs coming in from the ear. There are things happening in your mind which will prime you either to suffer or not to suffer. So you have that power within you to change the way you build up. And one of the ways you build up is through these three kinds of fabrication. The way you're breathing, the way you talk to yourself, the perceptions you hold in mind. You can change these so that you are not primed to suffer from the things that come. Now, some cases you say, well, anybody who experiences what I'm experiencing right now would suffer from it. You think about, well, there are arahants. The arahants can live in some really difficult circumstances, but they don't suffer. So there's something I'm doing wrong. Am I breathing in the wrong way? Am I talking to myself in the wrong way? Am I holding the wrong perceptions? Can I change these things? And the Buddha is saying, yes, you can. And he also gives you some advice. These are some good perceptions to hold in mind. These are good ways to talk to yourself. These are good ways to breathe. So it's important that you understand the Buddha's teachings on karma. He's not saying that whatever's going to happen is just going to happen. Sometimes some things will have to happen because of past actions, but you don't have to suffer from them. He says you can create a skillful mind state either through developing the brahmaviharas, which expands your mind. You can work on your powers of concentration so that you can withstand pain. You can withstand pleasure. Do you know what it means to withstand pleasure? The pleasure comes, but you don't just wallow in the pleasure. The pleasure is there. This is one of the skills you need in concentration practice. Be with pleasure, let the pleasure do its work. But you don't have to maximize how much I'm enjoying the pleasure right now, because otherwise you gobble it up. So it can do its work. And so through developing your mind, you can, then the Buddha says, it's like having a big lump of salt. If you take this big lump of salt and you put it in a little cup of water, you can't drink the water because it's too salty. But if you take that same lump of salt and you put it into a large, clean river, then you can still drink the water. So what we're trying to create in the present moment is a large, clean water, a large, clean river. And you can do that by the way you breathe, by the way you talk to yourself, by the perceptions you hold in mind, the feelings you focus on. That way, whatever bad karma you have from the past, even when it sends its results, you don't have to suffer from it so much. So this is these are the tools the Buddha's given you. He's teaching you, no matter what your past karma is, you don't have to suffer from it. It's not like the case. Before he gave a Dharma talk, okay, I want to show of hands in here. How many people in here deserve to suffer? Okay, you can go outside. Think of Angulimala. He had killed all those people, but he was able to gain awakening. There are lots of people who had bad karma, and the Buddha himself had some bad karma in his past, but he was still able to become Buddha. He said, if you had to wait until you paid off all your karmic debts before you gain awakening, nobody would ever gain awakening. So you can learn how to, in spite of your past bad karma, you can learn how that you don't have to suffer from it, and you can train the mind. So eventually that you can get beyond suffering entirely through these three types of fabrication. So that's the message I wanted to convey tonight. One of the reasons I did that is because I've heard some people say that you have no freedom of will, and that the Buddha taught that, which is not the case. So you do have some power.
Let's rejoice together and thanks for the teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Are there any questions?
I'll pass the mic if you raise your hand.
It was also clear and convincing that no one has any questions? Okay.
Good evening, Ajaan. Just a quick question. of the 12 links of dependent origination, which is the weakest link? Which is the one we should work on?
I didn't quite catch your question.
Of the 12 links of dependent origination, which is the one that we should go after? Which is the weakest link to work on?
It's going to vary from person to person. For some people, the weak link is between feeling and craving. For some people, the weak link is going to be between ignorance and fabrication. Like when you're sitting and meditating, you're actually bringing knowledge to the process of those three types of fabrication. And that's what it's the knowledge that cuts. There's a sutta where the Buddha says that you can cut the sequence anywhere when you bring knowledge to it. And this is one of the reasons why there's no one insight technique, because different people will find that different links are weak for them.
Sorry, a follow-up question. Ignorance gives rise to fabrications. So at that point, does the mind exist? Because only after fabrications then, Dhamma and consciousness and all that arise.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first place, if you're saying that, in order to break the cycle,
The mind is always there.
the mind is always there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ajaan.
There's a big hand back there.
Ajaan, I'd like to seek for your advice. While we are trying to stay positive most of the times, right, there tends to be people who are negative and often complain about a lot of things, nagging at our ears.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I find it difficult to handle such situation.
Mm-hmm.
How, I seek your advice, how can I actually better handle such situations? I tried to walk away, but challenging.
Okay, there's several things you can do. One is change the topic. Another is, okay, this person is complaining, but it's none of my business.
Yes, I agree with that, but a lot of times it's at work, so it's difficult for me to change the topic to Dhamma.
You don't have to change it to Dhamma, just change it to something else, And if someone is complaining about something, you say, okay, what suggestions do you have for improving?
I go to the extent to ask the person, you must have loved that guy a lot. That's why you have been allowing that guy to occupy your mind most of the time. Yeah.
What was that?
I told that person, my colleague, you must have loved that person a lot, so that you actual fact allow the guy to occupy most part of your life and your mind.
Well, that's the kind of complaint they're talking about? Of course, if you didn't really love the person, the person wouldn't bother you. Then the other thing would be, okay, if this person really has some bad habits, what would be a really effective way of dealing with those bad habits, to change the habits? And if you can't change the bad habits, you say, well, in that case, if I'm banging my head against a wall, I should be doing something else. Focusing on things where I can make a difference. Now, some people really resent rational advice, in which case you just kind of smile.
I
You know
observe
the
some,
Thai smile, don't you?
right, I observe some people tends to be very vengeful. Yeah, and a lot of hatred in their mind. I mean, I used to be like that also. But I'm grateful that after coming to Palilai, listening to a lot of Dhamma talks, yeah, let go of all the vengefulness, the hatred.
Okay, well that's one thing you can tell that person is that you must have a lot of bad karma with this other person. And isn't it time to stop the bad karma?
I got one more question that is to actually fact clear my own mind. Is there any consequences from stopping anyone to do dana, like doing volunteering work? Example, one of them.
Okay, the only cases where it would be actually useful to get them to stop is you see that they're actually harming themselves by being too generous.
If plainly because that person is not being liked, but the person have not been doing anything wrong.
I didn't catch what you said.
Okay, like what you mentioned just now, right? Sometimes to stop the person from doing dana is because the person is hurting themselves or hurting anyone else. But if that's not the case,
Let them go. You shouldn't be stopping them. The consequences are that someone who wants to give something to you will decide not to give it to you after all. Or you receive a gift, and as soon as you receive the gift, it breaks. That kind of thing.
okay, thank you, Ajaan.
I must have done something like that in the past, because every time I get a new robe, it gets stained within a week.
Ajaan, I'm back with a follow-up question. After ignorance comes violation of fabrications and then consciousness arises. So if consciousness was not there in the first place, how does ignorance and violation arise?
Well, there was an old consciousness there first. Remember, this is an ongoing process. The old consciousness was there, which was allows you to fabricate, and then the new consciousness based on the fabrication goes in this direction.
No wonder it's called samsara. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Ajahn. You were saying that ignorance leads to fabrications. So how does one differentiate between curiosity or creativity with fabrications?
Differentiate between what?
Creativity or like curiosity between like your ignorance lead to fabrications.
Okay, we can divide fabrications into two types. They're skillful and unskillful. In fact, the path will be skillful fabrications. And so with curiosity, the question is, what are you curious about? Some forms of curiosity are really unskillful, other forms of curiosity are skillful. And so you try to bring, and what does ignorance mean? It doesn't mean you don't know anything at all. It means that you're not paying attention to the Four Noble Truths. You don't understand, okay, what is actually causing suffering. So you actually do the things that would lead to more suffering. So you ask yourself, this kind of curiosity that I have right now, is this something that would lead to more suffering, more samsara, or is it something that would lead away?
Hello. Can I just ask what is the difference between sankhara and sanya, like perception and versus fabrication?
Okay, sanya, perception, is basically one type of fabrication. All of the aggregates are a kind of fabrication. And then sanya, fabrication is something you do something for a certain purpose. Now sanya, you have the purpose of trying to identify something. What is it? What is its meaning? What is its importance? I'll give an example. You see a red light on the street. There's the perception, one, that it's red. Then there's the perception that it means stop. And then there's the perception that I really ought to pay attention to this. This is important. So those are three kinds of perceptions that are used for identifying something and basically telling you what it means and how much you should pay attention to it.
Okay, so basically you said that like all of the aggregates are a subset of sankhara.
Right.
Okay. Then why is it that sankhara is like its own category?
It's because sankhara is very complex. Because there are also just intentions, which are a kind of sankhara. And intentions, they play their own role separately from, say, perception. They're separate from feelings. But there is an element of intention in those things. So you want to look for that element of intention. Otherwise, you ask the Buddha why he listed things this way.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Ajaan. Can a follow-up question? Can I ask a dependent origination that just now you mentioned on the consciousness is the old consciousness that is this like talking about the past life?
Not just past
model?
life, just the past moment of consciousness.
Cause maybe my understanding is wrong. I thought the consciousness is the sixth consciousness that we are talking about. The I consciousness, no consciousness, the sixth consciousness. So the dependent origination is we are talking about on the old consciousness or the sixth.
The old consciousness is one of the six kinds of consciousness.
Okay, the is the mind consciousness, right? Is it the mind consciousness that
Yeah, it's the consciousness that you have right here, right now. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Ajahn.
Because with the dependent co-arising, it's not just about going from one lifetime to the next. It's also about going from one moment to the next moment. And that's what's special about dependent co-arising, because the Buddha never said dependent co-arising happens in what time frame. This became a big issue in Indian philosophy. What is the correct time frame? Is it just in the course of a moment? Is it over many lifetimes? And the answer is yes, to all of those. It happens from moment to moment and also over lifetimes. If it happened only over lifetimes, you'd have to, you would end your defilements now, but you'd have to wait a couple lifetimes before you ended the process.
Hello, Ajahn. Since you were at the topic of skillful and unskillful fabrication earlier, I was thinking, is there such thing also for skillful and unskillful ignorance, saying that potentially ignorance is the complete opposite of mindfulness?
Okay, ignorance has a very specific meaning, which is being ignorant of the Four Noble Truths. It's always unskillful. Now, being ignorant of what's going to happen tomorrow, that doesn't count as the kind of ignorance the Buddha is talking about. Or not knowing how many moons Jupiter has. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about not looking at things in terms of the Four Noble Truths. Now, what does it mean to look at them in terms of the Four Noble Truths? You ask yourself, where is the suffering right now? What am I clinging to? Why am I clinging? What can I do to stop? You want to make that the big issue. If you're concerned about other issues, okay, that becomes ignorance.
Hi, Ajaan. Very grateful to be here tonight with all of the folks here. I have a rather complex but practical question that I encounter a lot in my life. I'm wondering, how do you relate to atheists and Christians around you, including your family, friends, when you talk about spirituality or deeper personal problems with them?
Okay, you asked them first, can we respect one another?
Yes.
Okay. If there's respect, then you can talk about anything. But then the question comes is, some of the problems you have, they will try to impose their framework on top of their answer, their way of understanding your problem. And you have to decide, does that really make sense in the context of my set of beliefs? And if it doesn't, you say, thank you, and move on.
Thank you.
You move on.
Good evening, Ajaan. Can I ask, just now when you mentioned we breathe in, we need to feel the energy going into all parts of our body, and when we breathe out, it's tension or all things are being released from our body. What if we cannot feel it? Do we picture it, or do we?
Even before you feel it, just try to hold that perception in mind that the energy can flow through the body.
So we need to kind of picture.
Put a picture up. It's like knowing that the world is round. Have you ever seen the world? But you make the assumption, okay, it is round. And so when you're flying from Singapore to New York, it makes sense to fly over the North Pole. And so you take that assumption on and you use the assumption. And then you find that it gets verified after a while, that yes, it is quicker to go over the North Pole than to follow the equator around. And so allowing yourself to allowing the idea to happen will actually make you more open to sensing it.
But, I mean, after that, if really I can feel it, is it because of I picture it and that's why it appears real, or it is really like this? How do I know?
It's really there. The question is, where are your perceptions right now that get in the way of your seeing that this really is breath? You may have a perception of your body as being just one big solid lump and nothing happens. But if you say, okay, actually, how do I feel my body? It's because there's this movement through the nerves. Without that, there wouldn't be any sensation in the body. It's not like you're going to be experiencing something new, it's just going to be putting a new label on it. When you put a new label on it, then you can do things with it you couldn't have done before. I'll give you an example. For a long time I had a very tight spot in the middle of my back, and I thought it was a bone. And then an osteopath came and worked on it and realized, oh, that was just a really tight muscle. And when you hold the perception, okay, that's a muscle, then you can relax it. If you have the perception that it's a bone, you can't relax it.
But is it okay if we just focus on one point instead of?
Yeah, focus on one point to begin with, but also be open to the fact that if the focus is too one-pointed, it begins to interfere with the circulation of the blood and the circulation of the energy in the body. So you want to think of, you're focused on the point, but then you let your awareness spread from that point.
Okay, so if we can't feel it now, we just need to picture and imagine as if it is like this.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Evening, Ajaan. Knowing awareness and meditation, mindfulness is very important. I make effort to stay alert. But how can I, but I still have a tendency to drift off sometimes unknowingly, despite the effort made to stay alert. So how can I help myself to be more skillful in keeping the, the drifting off at bay?
Okay, are we talking about when you're meditating?
Yes.
Okay. If you find that you have this tendency to drift off, you have to give the mind work to do. And so this is when you start thinking about, how about breath going down my arm? How about my breath going down this arm? How about going down the leg? Move around. What parts of the body are not getting breath energy right now? What parts have I been ignoring? Ask questions and then look for answers. And the fact that it becomes more interesting, then you'll be less likely to drift off.
So we can do that while we are doing meditation, vipassana.
Sure. Why not?
Okay, that will help to keep the mind stay focused.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, Bhante. So I wanted to ask, when you have a persistent illness or unrelenting headache, what kind of skillful fabrications will you use to help deal with it?
Okay, one is don't focus on your head. Think of the energy and the excess energy in the head going down, either down the back or down the front of your throat. Focus on the palms of your hands, soles of your feet, to get your awareness out of the head. Because the more you focus in the head, many times it adds more and more pressure. So think of getting the pressure out of the head in some way, either going down through the body. Hakuin, the Zen monk, had you visualize a big ball of butter on top of your head, and it's beginning to melt. And just think of the energy going down, 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 instead of coming up into the head and getting stuck there.
And the same applies for sickness as well?
With the sickness, again, try to find some spot in the body where there is a sense of well-being and focus there.
Understood. Thank you, Bhante.
This 16 steps of Anapanasati, it seems quite fascinating and also like paradoxical. It's as if we are trying to brought through a process of making skillful use of fabrications, but the ultimate endpoint is still to abandon all fabrications. It's kind of strange, paradoxical.
Well, the whole Eightfold Path is fabricated. It's not just the 16 steps. Everything the Buddha is teaching you is fabrication. You use this fabrication like the raft. The raft gets you over, then you let it go. What's important about this is that it's designed sort of to be, you might say, self-destructing at some point. Like with right view. There's, you know the story about Anatta Bindika? There was one day, the Buddha was out on his alms round, the monks were out on their alms round, Anatta Bindika didn't know who to talk to. He said, let's go talk to these other sectarians. And so he goes there, and they say, what are the Buddha's views? And here Anatta Bindika was a stream enter. He'd already seen the deathless. He says, I really don't know the totality of his views. How about the monks? What are their views? I don't know that either. How about your views? He said, I'll tell you my view when you tell me yours. And so they go through the list, the world is eternal, the world is non-eternal, the world is finite, infinite, that list of the 10 views of the time. And Anatta Bindika says that in each case, that view has been something that's been fabricated. If you hold to that, you hold to fabrications, then you are going to suffer. So by holding to this view, you're suffering. And so he said, okay, what's your view? He says, okay, whatever is fabricated is inconstant, whatever is inconstant is suffering. This is not self. They say, well, if you hold to that view, then you're going to suffer from that view too. He says, no, this view allows me to let go of it. Because you look at all fabrications to let go of them, and then you realize this view itself is a fabrication. So it's telling you, let me go. And so by letting it go, following the instructions of the view thoroughly, you let go totally. And the same with the 16 steps. The final one is total relinquishment. You drop the whole issue. So all of the Buddhist right views have this element of, did you ever see the Mission Impossible? You know, they give you the message and then the message self-destructs, you know. So it's the same with these fabrications. These fabrications will self-destruct. Another one would be sabbe dhamma anatta. All dhammas are not self. Okay, you use that to let go of everything. Then you realize this sentence too is a Dhamma. I've got to let it go. That's how you get to the unfabricated. There's another hand over here.
Thank you, Ajaan. I have a question about the first three factors, specifically about Sila, Bhatta, Paramasa. Mm-hmm. So I've heard two different explanations for this. One is not believing in rites and rituals. That's one. Mm-hmm. The other explanation is about being able to naturally keep the 5 precepts, which is a bit different, quite different from the first explanation. So can you just explain, help to explain what exactly is this? Thank you.
The way the Buddha explains this is that you are virtuous, but you are not made of virtue. In other words, you hold to the 5 precepts because you see how important they are, but you do not create a sense of self-identity around those precepts. And it's important to realize it's not the case that you let go of the fetters and then you get to stream entry. It's the other way around. You get to stream entry and then the result is that the fetters fall away. So don't worry about the fetters, focus on the path, because that's what takes you there.
Thank you, Ajahn.
We've got a few more minutes.
Thank you, Bhante. I don't really understand what you meant by you have to get into the stream, then you drop the fetters. Could you explain a little bit more?
Okay, when you get to the point where the mind stops fabricating and it has an experience of the deathless. You come out of that experience, you realize, one, there were no aggregates in that experience, so there's no more tendency that you would want to create a sense of yourself around the aggregates, because there was the consciousness in the deathless that has nothing to do with the aggregates. It's not part of the consciousness aggregate, something else. So that gets rid of your self-identity views. 2, about your doubts. When you experience the deathless, you realize, hey, the Buddha knew what he was talking about. You know for sure. Up to that point, there's always a question, but at this point, you know for sure. Finally, with the 3rd, is that you realize that the reason you didn't know this before was because you've been acting in unskillful ways. You say, well, from now on, I'm not going to act in unskillful ways. And you do this not out of a sense of pride or a sense of, I'm a better person than other people but because I hold to the precepts, simply because I've got to. So it's the experience of the deathless that cuts through those things. Short of that, nothing's going to cut through those fetters.
Thank you, Bhante. So my follow-up question is, because I've always been making the aspiration to drop the 3 fetters so I can enter the stream, so does this mean I need to reverse my...
Reverse your aspiration, yes.
Okay, so like, may I have the conditions to experience the deathless?
Right, right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ajaan. I think my mom has a question. She would like to ask, what is the role of chanting in Theravada Buddhism, aside from recollecting the teachings of the Buddha? And is it possible to enter into jhanic state just by chanting?
Some people get really concentrated when they chant, but if you get into the first jhana, you're going to stop chanting. But the role of chanting is basically to calm the mind down, to remind you of what the Buddha taught. This is especially good if you're at the end of a day when you've been working at a job or you've been working with your family, and the issues of the family and the job have been really weighing your mind down. You chant and you start thinking about what the Buddha had to say. It gives you a new perspective. And it changes the perspective, so it's not just you coming straight from work and trying to get the mind to settle down. It expands your mind. In the same way, think about the Buddha on the night of his awakening. He started out with remembering past lives. We're talking aeons and aeons of past lives. You think you've got issues that you bring to your meditation. Can you imagine all the issues of all those aeons? But he realized, okay, before he settled his mind into the present moment, he expanded his awareness. He says, is this just me? It's not just me, it's everybody. And that gave him a much larger perspective on things. He was able to put down his own personal issues as he saw the whole universe dying and being reborn. From that expanded awareness, then he focused on the present moment. So the chanting is one way of helping to expand your awareness. Make it bigger than the issues of the day. Last question?
Thank you, Ajaan, for answering all our questions and for your teachings. Let's all say sadhu 3 times and thanks for the teachings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.